Diolch yn fawr am y croeso caredig iawn. Dwi'n falch iawn i dod nôl i'r ardal a cefnogi yr wythnos hwn, achos dwi'n credu mae'n pwysig iawn. Thank you very much, Maya, for the kind welcome, and I'm very pleased to be joining you here today for a week, which I think is very important. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak to you here today about what the Assembly Government is doing, and in particular to talk a little bit about the support for this particular initiative in the context of the Sustainable Technology Week in Cardigan. I have to warn all those of you who walk into Celtic Sustainables that you go in to buy paint and you come out committed to buying to speak at an event like this. But I can certainly say some very, very positive things about the paint. Earthborn paint is wonderful, and I will never be using anything else again. But I think there are big challenges around for us nowadays. How we travel, how we build our homes, how we generate and use our energy, how we use our water resources, how we protect our communities from risk of flooding, and of course that's a particular issue here as well. And the role of technology in all these areas is absolutely critical, and it needs to tie in with an approach to sustainable development. Now, as the Minister in the Assembly Government, my responsibilities include environment, water, energy efficiency, fuel poverty, planning, waste, and I lead on sustainable development and climate change for the whole of the Assembly Government. And my department also leads on housing and regeneration. So we have very carefully put together a big portfolio that can respond to these big natural challenges facing us. And our Sustainable Development Scheme, that I hope some of you will have heard of, One Wales, One Planet, which we launched a year or so ago now, sets out how we as an Assembly Government, across every single portfolio, look at our activities and responsibilities. And it sets a vision of a sustainable Wales based on us using only our fair share of the Earth's resources, and on Wales becoming a fairer and more just society. And underpinning that scheme is a set of headline indicators. And the one which I kind of like tend to use most when I'm talking about the role that I have is the ecological footprint, what we consume as a nation and its effect on our planet. Now in Wales, our ecological footprint is currently 4.4 global hectares per person. So every one of us is responsible for 4.4 global hectares per person. But actually there's only 1.88 global hectares per person available to us in the world. So you can immediately see that we're using far too much. And all I can say, and particularly to Mona, who I've just met, coming from London, is in London we use a lot more. We use a lot less than England and Wales, and certainly a lot less than London. But we are therefore really using 2.3 planets worth of resources to sustain our lifestyles. And quite clearly, that is absolutely unsustainable. We cannot carry on using more planets than we have available, because there will be tremendous consequences. In fact, there are already tremendous consequences. If you look at what's happening in Pakistan, when you see levels of issues around drought and flooding in Africa, we are seeing huge impact in the context of our planet. If we carried on in the way that we've been behaving to date, we would actually need about 3 planets by about 2020. So, in a sense, our whole consumption approach to life, it may have been affected at the moment by the recession, but of course if the recession was over and people started consuming again in the way they have previously, we could end up in a worse situation, not a better situation, if we don't take action ourselves. Now, achieving a vision of actually being fairer to the planet and also fairer to all the other human beings on this planet requires a very different approach to our management of waste, to our management of water, to energy and housing. So we've made sustainable development the central organising principle of what we do in the Assembly Government, And that's about science, it's about the research and development of technical solutions, it's about what they mean for people who have to install them, who have to use them, and it's about how our behaviour and changes in behaviour can help support the benefits that we offer. And some of you will have seen that at the Eisteddfod at the beginning of August, we launched Welsh Future Homes at the former Chorus steelwork site in Ebbw Vale, demonstrating some of the technologies that will play a role and will contribute towards our understanding of the designs and technologies that are likely to be the future as we move towards higher levels of sustainability in new housing. And here in the context of the week, and it's great that this week has been organised for the first time, there's an opportunity to show and explain the technologies that are available, be it rainwater harvesting, photovoltaics, sheep's wool, or newspaper-based insulation, demonstrating with live examples the real buildings that you will see on the tour that Vicky will be taking some of you on later. And I just want to put some of that into a policy context. I mean, first of all, I want to talk a little bit about existing housing, because although it's much easier for us as a government to make major changes about what happens to new housing, it is actually existing housing that is always going to be the vast majority of the effect of what we do. And it's responsible for over a quarter of our carbon emissions. And we have more older and more inefficient housing stock in Wales than elsewhere. So the challenge is disproportionately large for us as well. We have established a strategic energy performance programme, Arbed, to Save, which is about coordinating the investment from the Assembly Government, from energy companies and from European funding in an area-based approach to try and maximise environmental benefits, the carbon emission reduction, social benefits by operating in areas of low income, and economic benefits in terms of offering new jobs in the context of a green agenda, and putting all that together in the energy efficiency of existing housing. And there are now 25 schemes, home energy efficiency and renewable energy schemes, being undertaken literally as we speak in communities across Wales. We've also just redrawn our fuel scheme, our fuel poverty scheme, because we were acutely aware that what we were not getting out of our fuel poverty scheme was the appropriate match between those on low income and those in fuel poverty and the effectiveness of the scheme. So we've redrawn that now in terms of taking that forward, because it's critically important. And I think the point that you made in the introduction about the fact that people here are off gas, they rely very heavily on oil. For example, it's more expensive. We know that if we're not at peak oil now, we're going to be very close to it. There are some real challenges in terms of how we move away from our fossil fuel-based technologies. How we take decisions to support this agenda, particularly in the context of having an 80% legal commitment in the context of carbon emission reduction by 2050. I mean, we hope the new UK government will stick to that, but that is a legal commitment in legislation, and one that we strongly support in the Assembly Government with our 3% per year reductions, which will be coming into play from next year. But how we take this agenda forward means that although we know there are improvements that can be delivered through existing construction methods and designs, we also know that there are limits, and that beyond those limits we have to look at new approaches and new methods of construction. So I referred to that group of houses in Ebbw Vale, the first Code 6 passive house in the UK, for example, the T. Enos visitor centre built with Welsh timber, point to some of the solutions that we'll need to consider. And in the area of energy, it doesn't start off with renewables. It's got to start off with demand reduction, because we all use too much energy, we waste energy. So we need to bring our demand down. We need to use less energy Be that through improving insulation qualities and air tightness of buildings, improving the efficiency of appliances and the equipment we use, and that can then be complemented by renewable energy generation, heat and electricity to reduce demand on the grid. And we've made a number of major planning changes, which in fact kick in from this month, to make sure that now individual houses in Wales cannot be built unless they comply with much higher energy efficiency standards and higher than other parts of the UK.